web interactive development things. Okay, I'm going to start with talking a little bit about the Flash interactive component that you guys are going to put on your mobile websites here. Now remember that this assignment, your project one, is due next week, so you'll have to bring that in, and you'll be able to take the folder that it's in and drop it into my drop folder here at school and turn it in that way. So just make sure you have it in a folder that's called your name underscore project one or whatever. But anyway, I wanted to share with you a link that Amanda sent me. She found this website on the internet, and if you notice when you roll your mouse over these little taps here, this really scary looking fluid comes out. Looks like maybe they tapped into the sewage line there or something. And this is, under the meat processing plant. Anyway, but it's, whether you like what's coming out of these apps or not, it's a cool idea, right? Interactive, and this is a good example of an interactive graphic, right? And so I wanted you guys to be inspired to create more interactive graphics for your Flash aspect of this project by showing you something like this, and also by showing you the potential of things you could do. So like, for example, when we saw my octopus example, we saw that there was just some bubbles coming up, and that does qualify as interactive in the sense that it's an animation. There's bubbles coming up, but there's also other things you could do like that. And I didn't get a chance to finish this the way I would have liked to, but I just want to show you what you could potentially do with your interactive piece of this. So, for example, I went into Flash here, and I made an animation, and I'm thinking, okay, what could I replace that bottom bubbles things with? And so I thought, okay, well, what if I replaced it with an animation that said, click on the bubbles to receive online coupons, okay? Then that has a dual effect. One, it makes it interactive in that they have to click on it, and two, now they want to click on it because they're going to get something back, right? So then what I did was I just took some really lame bubbles here and animated them coming up like this, right? And the idea is that they could move around and bubble up and stuff like that. But then I wanted to make it interactive so that you could click on it and have something happen. So what I did was I took this first bubble here and I added what's called ActionScript to it, which allows it so that when you click on it, it takes the playback head, which is this little red guy down here, and moves it ahead to another frame so that they can get their coupon, right? So let's see how that works. So if I go to Control and Test Movie, so we see that the bubbles come in, right? And then you click on one bubble and it goes, hey, $5 off your first car wash, right? Now the way to finish this animation off would be to have a little button down here that says return to bubble page or see more coupons or whatever. And then you could have this look more like a real coupon and print it out, right? So, but let's see how this was put together. Now I want to make sure that you guys can see this. So I'm going to grab my timeline and drag it up to the top here. And well, now it got totally small, so I'll try and make it a little bigger. And then there's a way to make these visuals a little bigger too. Let's go large. Okay. So what I did was I animated each of the bubbles individually. So and I'll make a new bubble layer here so you can see it. I made a new layer by just clicking on this little layer button, and I'll call this new bubble. And then I just can go to frame one here and go over to my drawing tools and click on the oval tool. I can click on the fill tool and pick whatever color I want, and then click on the stroke tool over here and select another color, maybe a darker blue. And then I could come over here and I could drag out a bubble, right? Now right now, this bubble that I've created, what kind of artwork is it? Is it a bitmap? Is it vector art? Who knows? Who wants to venture a guess? Yes?
Vector art.
It is vector art. Why do you say that?
Because whenever we're scaling it, it doesn't seem to get anywhere distorted.
Right. So, and you're correct. And the reason is because Flash's native format is vector art. Okay? Just like Illustrator's native format is vector art, right? And Photoshop's is bitmap. Okay? So when you draw something in Flash, it is vector art. When does it become a bitmap? When you publish it, okay? In other words, when you save it to an SWF file, everything in there that's an image becomes a JPEG, just like all the audio becomes MP3. In other words, it compresses everything down and exports it into a bitmap format, right? But the advantage of the vector art is that it's small and small file size and easy to resize and everything. So that's why it's vector here in Flash. Now, so this bubble that I've made, if I click on it once, I select just the interior of the bubble. But remember, this is a shape that has a stroke on it. It's got a dark line around it. So if I double click on it, it selects both the fill and the stroke. And that's a way that I can get the object. Now, if I want to do anything with this, if I want to, animate it or apply action script to it to make it interactive, what do I have to turn this into? A symbol, right? Because you have to take your objects and turn them into symbols so that you can apply actions to them and animations to them, right? And the way that I would turn this into a symbol is I would go up to Modify at the top of my screen and then click Convert to Symbol. Now then it gives me a dialog box which says, okay, you want to convert this to a symbol, what do you want to call it? There's a name box. And then what kind of symbol do you want? And the choices that I have are movie clip, button, and graphic. Now, of these three, which is the least powerful and most icky? The one that never gets picked for dodgeball.
Movie clip.
Nope.
Good one, right?
Movie clip's a good one, that's right. The button, no, the button gets picked for dodgeball quite often.
What?
What? What is dodgeball? And who are you? Nope, well then there's only one left, the graphic. The graphic symbol is the redheaded stepchild of the symbols because it's just not very powerful. The button symbol allows you to change the graphic when you interact with it. Like you can roll over it and the button will change. You can click on it and the button will change. The movie clip has its own timeline, which allows you to create your own animations inside of a movie clip, right? But the graphic symbol is not that powerful, so we're not that interested in using it. So we'll go ahead and we'll use this one, which is a movie clip, and which is the default, and we'll just call this new bubble, and we'll hit OK, right? Now notice when I made it into a symbol, it now gets a blue bounding box around it and a little circle center point. And so now we know that that is a symbol and it's ready for animation, right? Now, if I want to animate this bad boy so that it comes up on my screen, I'm in frame 1 right now, which is where I started with this thing. I can click on this and I can move it, like here, we'll move it off to the left of the screen. And then I can go down to some point in my animation, like say frame 24. I can right click and I can say Insert Keyframe. And what that does is it makes it so that there's another, basically this symbol here is copied and paste it in at frame 24. Now if I take it at this point and I move it to a new location, that means that on frame 1 it's going to be over here, and on frame 24 it's going to be over here. Now all I need to do is tell Flash to go ahead and do the tweening, which is the animation between the first state and the ending state. Now I'm old-fashioned with Flash, I've been using it for a long time, so I always use this thing called Create Classic Tween, which just does it right away, but the motion tween is more powerful. So now you can see if I grab the playback head, which is this big red guy up here, and I scrub with it, which is going over the timeline, you can see that my bubble, which starts in frame 1, by frame 24 ends up on the screen, right? And that's how I did all of these other 3 bubbles. You can see that if we go to bubble 1, I keep wanting to say bubblicious, but if we go to bubble 1, you see on frame 1 it's here. And on frame 24, I got to move this up a little so you can see where it ends up. If I go to frame 24, it ends up here, right? And then in between that is the tween. Now what else is happening to this bubble as well as it moving? It's becoming more opaque. In other words, it starts out completely transparent at frame 1 and becomes completely opaque by 24, and that sort of adds to the bubble quality of it, right? Now, the way that I did that was I went to the keyframe on frame 1, which is this little symbol here, and I clicked on it, and over here in the properties box, I can click on color effect, and I can open up this drop down, and one of my choices here is alpha, which is transparency. I can grab this little slider here, which was at 100%, and I can drag it down to an alpha of 0, which makes that transparent, right? Now, if I go over to this symbol on 24 and click on that and make sure that that is 100%, what happens with either a motion tween or a classic tween, and it's a little deceptive because it's called a motion tween or a classic tween, they do the same thing, but the idea behind the tween is not just that it moves something. A tween changes the state of the object from one state to another, and that includes all attributes, right? So if in the first state, the first keyframe, the object is down here, and it's transparent, that's a location and an attribute, it's transparent. But at frame 24, it's up here, and it's fully opaque, in other words, you can see it. That means that the classic tween or the motion tween has to do two things. It has to move its position, and it has to create all those in-between frames that do that, and it has to change its look from transparent to fully opaque, and it has to do that in a number of tweens too. It has to pick a number of steps that it's going to do to make that fully opaque. So that's what your tweens do. They make a change from one state to another. So as you can see, we've got 3 bubbles coming up here. Let's ignore this big dude right here that I just made. But the other 3 all do the same thing. The first one comes in, the second one comes in, the third one comes in. They all come from different positions, but they all go from transparent to opaque. Now notice that they all come in at different times too. And the way I did that was the first bubble, this bubble 1, starts in frame 1 and ends at frame 24. But the second bubble, bubble 2, starts at approximately frame 13 and ends at approximately frame 36. So in other words, by staggering when these bubbles appear and when they stop moving, I've made the illusion of, something interesting going on here, right? There's bubbles popping up at different times. So you can use this to your favor, this sort of staggering of animation. Now, the next question after you've got your bubbles on the screen here is how do you make it so that when all the bubbles are on the screen, that they stay for a while and that the animation doesn't keep going, that it doesn't continue to loop or anything like that. And what happens in this case is you create your keyframe here and you extend that keyframe so that it goes for X amount of frames in order to keep your animation at this point. So for example, if I go ahead, I'm going to get rid of this new bubble that I made because it's a bit of a distraction. So I'm just going to take this layer and drag it down to the trash can and go away with it, right? Okay, so now if we look at this, we can notice something. When we watch the animation, it will play the animation. All 3 bubbles come on the stage, but then they stay on the stage and the animation is not looping, right? So how do we achieve that? Well, the way that we got them to stay on the stage was we just extended the frame here. Once the final bubble comes on, we have the frame going for about another 40 frames, which might be another 2 or 3 seconds, up to this point, right? But then after that, it would conceivably stop the animation or loop it. So the way that we stop it from looping is we add something called action script in. So we add a new layer here called actions, and on that layer, we open up a window called actions, and this is where you write action script. And action script is a language that allows you to do behaviors and other scripting that allows you to make something interactive, right? So what you'll see, and it's probably impossible for you guys to see from so far out, but at the very last frame of this movie, which is where there's actually something happening, which is frame 80, I've made a layer called actions, and I clicked right here and I inserted what's called a blank keyframe, and you can do that by, you click on a frame, you hold down your control key on a Mac, or you right click on a PC, and you say insert blank keyframe. And what happens is it inserts a blank keyframe where you can then add something. And what I did was I added a little bit of action script which is this right here, and it's just the word stop with 2 parentheses and then a semicolon. Now this is an example of action script. An action script looks a lot like another form of scripting that's used in web design. Does anybody know what that is? Yes, it looks like JavaScript. Now I know we haven't spent much time in JavaScript, and we probably won't because it's a really dense, wonky language, but the fact is that ActionScript is a child of JavaScript. JavaScript looks almost identical to ActionScript. And so in other words, if you learn ActionScript, you'll have a leg up on learning JavaScript. But what happened was Adobe took JavaScript and then made their own flavor, their own version of it, and called it ActionScript. And that's what powers the behaviors and the interaction in Flash. So what this means, this literally means stop the animation. So I went up to this ActionScript layer, and I told the animation to stop just by writing the word stop, putting in these parentheses and a semicolon. The semicolon ends the line, similar to what coding language that we use in web design? CSS. Remember when you do something like, width 30px, that you end the line with a semicolon to tell the computer, hey, that line is done, go to the next line and read the next attribute, right? So semicolon, stop, we understand the word means to stop, and the parentheses mean that you could put some kind of a variable in here if you wanted to. That's just more advanced coding, but we just leave it blank because we don't have anything else to put in there. Okay, so now we understand what's going on. We have this Flash animation. We know that how the bubbles were created. They were created as symbols. They were movie clips. We have them animating in and going from the bottom up, going from transparent to opaque, and we have staggered the entrance of them so that it happens over time, right? We also have used ActionScript to stop the movie at frame 80, and now we have to make this interaction, or this movie interactive in the sense that when somebody clicks on one of these bubbles, which we know is a movie clip, we want something to happen. We want them to go somewhere where they can see a coupon, right? Because that's the promise that we made. So the way that we do that, the movie stops at frame 80. That means anything past frame 80 is no man's land. That means nothing's going to happen over there. So we could conceivably put a keyframe in there and put some artwork or some text, and we could say, hey, we're going to create an action that when somebody clicks on a bubble, it's going to send them over to that frame, and there is where our discount coupon is going to be. So sure enough, I went over to frame 82 here, and on frame 82, I simply inserted a keyframe and typed $5 off your first car wash. Okay, so now we understand how this is going to work. We have somebody watching the animation. It stops at frame 80. Then if they click on this movie clip here, it should send them to frame 82, which and it should stop there, and then it will show them the coupon. So the trick is, we've got this set up to work, but the trick is how do we add that interactivity to this via ActionScript to get the playback head to move over 2 frames and to stop there? Well, the way you do that is through a little window called Code Snippets. So if we click on this window and we go to Code Snippets, you'll see that there's this window that pops up, and it has something called ActionScript and something called HTML5 Canvas. If we open ActionScript, and I know these are incredibly hard to read for you guys, so I'll just read them to you, but there's one called Timeline Navigation. And this is our timeline, and navigation means just going back and forth across the timeline. That's exactly what we want. We want to take people from frame 80, and when they click on something, we want them to go to frame 82. So if I open Timeline Navigation, and once again, I know these are really hard for you to see, but there is a choice in here which says click on an object to go to a frame and to stop. All right? And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I want. So all I have to do is click on my object on the stage on frame 80, which is this little movie clip here, and then double click on this, And in my actions window, it drops in what's called a code snippet. And the code snippet is preformed code which does exactly what you ask it to do. In this case, it takes the movie clip and it does something called add an event listener. And an event listener is listening for something to happen. In this case, it's a click. And so it's listening for something called mouse event click. When that event happens, in other words, when somebody clicks, you can see it says right here, it says movie clip 1, which is our bubble. Add event listener, mouse event click. So in other words, if somebody clicks on that movie clip, which is the bubble, then it says, now you want to go to and stop on a certain frame number, okay? Underneath that, it adds something called a function, which is merely following up from what was happening here. Here we're saying, listen for a click. If somebody clicks, send them down to this function here, and this function is simply going to do something, and it has this command here which says go to and stop, and then parentheses and a number in it. And in this case, the number is 82. Right? So it says, go to and stop is the command. Then there's parentheses, and then there's a semicolon. Now in this case, the parentheses is a variable, and I put in the number 82, which says when somebody clicks on our bubble movie clip, send them over to frame 82 and stop the movie, right? And so sure enough, when we watch the animation, we see the bubbles come on staggered. We see it stop at frame 80. If we click on this, the action script is listening for a mouse click. I click on it, and sure enough, it hears it, and it sends me to frame 82 and displays this. And so that becomes our interactive animation. Now, if I wanted to, I could now put some text on frame 83 and on frame 84 that are different coupons. And then I could attach it to those other bubbles so that they have a similar script and just put in those other numbers, 83 and 84, so that when you click on those bubbles, you're going to those frames. Now, the last part of this, of course, would be, as I said, I didn't have time to do this, but when you get to frame 82, you're going to want to, or 83 or 84, you're going to want to have some navigation available to you. So the next step would be to put a button down here that says, see more coupons, and then that would use the same sort of action script to take them from frame 82 back to 80, where they could click on the other bubbles and see other coupons, right? So is this making sense to you guys? Okay. Now let me show you an example of a website I showed you last week and how I told her she can change her website to fit this kind of interaction. So hopefully you guys remember we looked at this food cafe site that one of my students is doing for this class. She's studying it as an independent student. And you can see that she's got all the necessary things here. She's got the hamburger menu and this. And then, of course, I was making fun of her in this class and also to her face about this burning hamburger, right? So I said, hey, look, why don't we take my bubble example and let's, I said, what are you trying to say with this hamburger that's on fire, right? And she said, oh, it's really hot. I'm like, yeah, it's hot, it's on fire. So I said, okay, let's take my bubble example and have you do something else. What if you put some text up here and said, click to see how spicy our burgers are. Right? And then I said, make a little icon of a hamburger and write the word hot on it, right? And then when they click on that, have this animation where it's on fire, right? And then have another hamburger and say, volcanic, And then when they click on this, it's spitting out flames or something. And then the third one could be sort of like nuclear or something, And then they click on that and it explodes, or something. It just could be fun, or it could explode and then there could be a coupon underneath there that says $1 off nuclear burgers or something, So what I'm trying to show you with this is how this idea of an interactive animation can be used on one of your real websites to tie in to whatever content you're creating, all right? Now, this stuff that I showed you, it might be a little over your heads if you're not that familiar with ActionScript. But keep in mind that in the book and the lessons you're doing, they're using this type of thing. I think it's chapter 6 where they do something interactive like this. And if you need some help with and making an interactive navigation animation like this, you can look at your book and do an example out of the book, and maybe just even use some of the code out of the book to help you develop this, right? And I'll put this up there on the website too. I'll make a link that goes back to the main page, and you guys can always open mine and hack it and do whatever you want with it. But please consider when you turn these in next week, try to take your animations up a step and make them more interactive if you can, because I think it'll help your project. Okay, any questions or comments about that? Okay, so let's go talk briefly about our octopus template, right? So as we said, you guys are turning this in next week, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity if anybody has any questions or they're running into any problems with their site. How are you guys doing on it?
I just have a question about the navigation.
Okay.
I was trying to change the colors of the text.
Okay.
And let me just get into it for a second.
So you're wondering like where it is?
Well, no, I thought I found it in the responsive nav.css.
Okay.
And then I went to where it says nav collapse and then A and then a bracket.
Right.
And then I went down to color and I changed the color to what I wanted, but when I preview it in the browser, it shows up as like purple, which is not what I wanted.
Okay. All right. So let's see what's happening with that. So if
Not
we
the hover color to change, I should tell you that.
you didn't get the other one to change. Okay.
Right.
So let's preview this in Firefox. Oh God, it's doing that stupid thing. Maybe I'll do it in Google Chrome.
Yeah, I tried it in both Chrome and Safari.
Okay, so here we are, Google Chrome, right? So one of the things we can do in Chrome is we can use the developer tools. So we'll click on this hamburger and go to Tools and go to Developer Tools. And now we get our Firebug-like thing that opens up here. Now if we open up our hamburger, click on our magnifying glass, we can scroll over different parts of this and see the HTML code down here that it corresponds to them, right? So I'll click on my thing, my little magnifying glass, and I'll click on this word home, and that will go ahead and highlight the word home here. And then over here I'll see what Amanda was talking about, which is it tells me where the code is that's affecting the layout and look of this. It's in responsive-nav CSS, and it's on line 37. And this is the A hover color, which turns it into this medium gray. Okay, so that's one of the colors. Those are all the A hovers, right? And then here's the one that actually Amanda is having trouble with. And what it is I don't know if you guys can see that that's purple. Yeah, you can. You see how that little color chip is purple? That's the color Amanda's seeing, right? And she's wondering, she goes, I went in and I changed, the color of my links so that they should be something other than purple. Like if I went down here and changed these right here from white to yellow or something, we should see those links be yellow. But what's happening is they're coming up purple for her, right? So the reason for that is because the link state, or links themselves, have several different states. Okay, first of all, in CSS code, what is the letter that represents a link in CSS?
A.
A. The letter A represents a link. So if you're in a style sheet and you see A, you know that you're referring to some kind of a link, right? Now there's different kinds of links, right? A by itself means just the link, what you're calling an active link, which is just sitting there on the page ready to be clicked, right? So we'll say that there's one state which is active, right? And that has a certain color attribute that can be assigned to it, right? Now there's a second link state, which means that your mouse is now right on top of the link. What state is that? Hover. Very good. A hover means you're literally hovering over that, and that has a color applied to it too. In this case, it's that #999, which is that gray color, right? And we know that the active color for this particular link on mine, at least, is white, which is FFF. Right? Now, there's a third state, which means if you've clicked on the link before, visited, right? And in this case, that color equals 55108B or something like that. I don't know what it is, but something like that, right? Now, if Amanda is seeing this color instead of this color, what does that mean?
Well, that means that she's visited it.
Yes, it means the links have been clicked on, and that's why they're purple, okay? So what you have to do is go into your web browser and clear out the browser cache.
I was just gonna say, because I tried, well, the first time I didn't try that, and the second time I did try that, and it didn't work, but I think it's because I had them,
Like flipped or something?
yeah,
Okay.
I think I just had the colors that I wanted flipped.
Okay, all right. So, but anyway, now you know that there's these three states, and you know, if you wanted to, sometimes what I'll do, because I don't really care about visited links, you know, I mean, I should, but I just don't. Sometimes I'll just make these two colors the same, so that if somebody's clicked on it, who cares? It's still the same color, right?
Yeah.
Now, you know, you guys can do whatever you want. It's probably a better idea to have a different visited link color, but that just seemed like something that we did back in the early days of web design that nobody really cares about anymore. I don't know. I don't really care. When I go to Amazon.com, do I need the books link to show me that it's purple, that I've been there before? I know I've been to the books link, right? So.
Probably depends on what site you're.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say it's probably better to err on the side of caution and do visitor links a different color. I'm just sort of burned out on, you know, linking anything that I can get away with, I will do, and that means not putting in a different visitor link color. Okay, so other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Or problems? Are you guys having some success with this project? Yes and no? Yeah. Okay.
My question was the hamburger.
Yeah.
Since you said vertical space is kind of a premium,
Right.
I wanted to put the hamburger in the same frame maybe as a logo or something.
Right. Okay. I remember you telling me about that. Yeah. So, well, there's a couple things with the hamburger. First of all, I tied the hamburger to a specific image file that I have inside the folder. And I believe that image file has a white background. And if I right-click on this and say, let's see, I'm in Chrome, so it's not letting me do it. Let's see. Open link in new tab. Yeah, maybe if I go to Firefox, I can see this. Or maybe I can click on hers. Let's see. Copy link location. No, I don't want that. Inspect element. It's not giving me what I want. I want to open it up in a new window, and it's not letting me do that. But anyway, you guys will have to take my word for it. This is an image with a white background on it. And you guys might very well want to make that white transparent so that your color shows through, right? And so all you'd have to do, normally you would just, you can go into either Firebug or something like Google Chrome, and you can track down whatever that image is. And once again, here in Google Chrome, we can go to Tools, Developer Tools. We can click on our spyglass here and click on that. And then, you know, we roll over here until we find the line of code. And here it is. It says background image, images / hamburger. And it tells me that that's in the images folder, and it's called hamburger.jpg, right? So I can just go into my fluid files folder, which should be right here. And I can go into images, and sure enough, there's the hamburger. And I can open that up in a program like Photoshop. And I can, you know, double click on this background so that it gets unlocked, and then I can click on my magic wand and click on this white and select it all and hit delete, and now it becomes transparent. And now if I go File, Save for Web, I can save this as a ping, and it will be saved with that transparent background. Now, what I would have to do then is I would have to change my code here so that it wasn't looking for images hamburger.jpg, but it was looking for hamburger.ping, right? And now whatever my background color is, that will show through. Now, what you could do is you could additionally take this image and you could expand the width of it to the full width of the mobile website. So you could go under Image, Canvas Size. You could change your measurements to pixels, and you can click this little arrow which will take the existing content over to the left, and you could make the width of this 400 pixels, right? Now you can go in and you can add a logo here, and now your hamburger is sitting right next to a logo, but in essence it's all the same graphic that triggers the opening of the navigation. So this is one way that you could get the navigation to be right next to the hamburger. So there's tons of hacks and cheats and creative ways that you can mess around with a web page like this. Okay, Nichelle, did you have a question?
Yeah, but it's because I'm behind. I just
Okay, all right, I'll talk to you about that after we take a little break or something. Okay, any other questions or problems you guys are having with this? No? Okay. Let me go back to the website and see what else we got going on today. Okay, so Ports and Forum, the quiz, talk about these guys that are coming in. Let me show you something real quick because you guys might not get a chance to look at this stuff from these guys. This is Lance Willett's biography. This is Lance right here. He's coming in a few weeks, and he's just an amazing guy. He's been doing web design for a long time. I've worked with him on some big projects, and he actually had a really interesting life that some of you guys may envy. He and his wife both worked for companies that had telecommuting going on. So in other words, he worked for a company that was in California, but he lived in Tucson, and he did all his work online. And she had a similar situation where she worked for a company, but she did all her work on her laptop, right? So what the two of them did was they bought an Airstream, and you're the Airstream queen, right?
Pretty much.
Okay, and they bought an Airstream, and for like a year or more, they drove around the country, and they lived on the road, but every morning they got up on their little laptops and went to work, right? And they went to the national parks, and they would stay at Yosemite, and it's like, oh, I'm going to take my lunch break and just go outside and you're at Yosemite, right? And it's kind of an amazing life if you think about it. It's, there's pros and cons to that kind of life, but when you think about it, the kind of work that you folks may likely do in this industry can allow you to do things like telecommute or have a mobile life. And so I think that's a very interesting aspect of Lance's life. He and his wife eventually came back here, sold the Airstream, and now they're living sort of a more sedentary life in the sense that they're here. Now the other gentleman who's coming in is named Matt Muncy, and he's a front-end developer, and he works for this company called Draw Backwards, and they do really interesting stuff. He's perfect to come talk to us about interactive design because big companies come to them and say, hey, we sell such and such. We sell a vitamin pill that will turn you into an invincible, person, and we need an app that communicates all the information from our website very succinctly. So they will have to figure out how to take the information that is on a huge website and knock it down into a few screens that can quickly and easily be read. And they have to do all the things that we've talked about when we talked about user interface design and user experience, which is they have to make information architecture. They have to make a plan, and they have to literally draw it out and say, okay, the home page is going to have the logo and the icon and then a big tagline, and then it's going to go to these different screens. They're going to have, about our vitamins, order our vitamins, discount coupons or whatever. And they have to go through this whole process, and they have to map it out for themselves, and they have to go to the client and sell the client on their ideas, and then they get feedback and things change. Then they have to make a mock-up. Then they have to make a working prototype like your wireframes, and then so on and so forth, all the way down the line until they have a finished product that launches, right? And along that route, they have to test it out on different devices, okay? So there's a lot of stuff going on there that has to be done. And I really strongly encourage you guys to look at the websites that I've linked to, because you could get some insight into what these people do, and it might help you with some questions, right? Okay. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you guys that I think is pretty cool, and I think you'll be excited about. Hopefully I have a key here. I think I do. You may have noticed this big machine here. This is actually what we'll call the oven, and any students that are late get put in here. Okay, from now on. But actually, what's in here right now, let's see. We ordered some equipment. Came in. I'll show you what it is. This is just part of it, but part of what we're doing in this class is we're looking at interactive design, and one of the things we talked about is the fact that your designs can be looked at on any device, anywhere, any screen size or anything, right? So what we've done is we've ordered some different devices that that can show you your website in different screens. So we got a Galaxy Tab S. So what's going to happen with these web projects that you turn in, we're going to put them up online. And then we're going to look at them from these different devices. So we'll look at it from this. We'll look at it from a Kindle Fire HDX, right? We'll look at it from an iPad, which I have. And we'll look at it from a Nexus 7, okay? And here's the really cool part, right? You guys are familiar with the iPhone, right? There's a version of this device that Apple makes, which is called an iPod Touch. You guys familiar with that, right? It's just an iPhone without the phone capability, right? And this is perfect for checking out mobile websites, right? Well, we ordered 25 of these, right? And they're actually already in. And they have to do some processing of them and everything. But what's going to happen is we're going to keep those in that locked container there. And when we come to class, I'm going to open that container, and you guys will be able to check them out. And while you're here at school, you'll be able to look at your websites on mobile devices, right? And then you can look at it, see what it looks like, and then go to your computer, make a change, upload it, and then look at it again. So this is a really fun. And then when we scale them up to tablets size, you guys will be able to look at them on tablets, and then of course you can look at them on the desktop and things like that. So I just think this is really cool. And we put in what's called a Wi-Fi hub right above this classroom, so that you'll get really super powerful Wi-Fi and be able to connect to the internet with these mobile devices. So anyway, that's just something I want to tell you guys that I think is going to be really fun. We'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks. Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. All right, so I think that's pretty much it for me for this week. You guys have to finish up your mobile websites for next week. You have to continue working in Flash, and you should be up to lesson 8 this week. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, but you've got the rest of the period to work on your stuff. Don't forget to also turn in that quiz next week to take home.